A young woman doesn't reject you because you're old. She rejects you because you don't awaken the fantasy her youth demands. You might have money, stories, experience, but if you make these mistakes, she won't see you as a desirable man. She'll see you as an emotional father figure, as a past that doesn't turn her on. Most older men fail not because they lack resources, but because they lack codes. They still act as if respect, affection, or logic were enough to win her over. But they're not. You're not talking to a woman from your generation. You're talking to a moving desire, to a brain trained to test, to filter, to discard without guilt. Today, I'm going to show you the 7 mistakes that make a young woman lose all interest in an older man. And let me warn you right now, the last one is the most brutal because it's the most common. I'm Celia, and if you want to seduce without losing respect, conquer without begging, and understand the mind of a young woman before she uses you, stay tuned. Because after this video, you won't see her the same way again. Have you ever felt like the more affection you give her, the more indifferent she becomes, as if your presence bores her and your tenderness puts her to sleep? Has it happened that after texting her, calling her, trying to reach out, she takes hours to reply, and when she does, it's with coldness masked as politeness? If so, then you've already fallen without realizing it into the first fatal mistake older men make with younger women, being emotionally needy. And yes, this is the first point, being emotionally needy, of the video. When an older man becomes emotionally needy, his maturity stops being a strength and starts being a weakness, because instead of coming across as a complete man, he looks like a late blooming teenager seeking approval. He seems like someone who, instead of offering a world, needs someone to give his life meaning. And for a young woman, that's not just unattractive, it's repelling. She's not looking for a savior, but even less for an emotional beggar. Picture this. He's over 50, experienced with stories, a career, and yet waiting for her message like it's oxygen. She replies briefly, distracted with zero enthusiasm. And what does he do? Sends another message, asks if everything's okay, tells her he misses her. Do you think that moves her? Number. It disconnects her because instead of seeing her as a gift, he chooses. He turns her into a prize he needs. And when a man needs, he stops leading. He stops being a choice. He becomes a burden. A young woman is trained to detect emotional weakness, not out of cruelty, but instinct, because her biology, even when wrapped in modernity, is looking for a man who is firm, grounded, hard to throw off balance. And when you, from your unresolved wounds and poorly managed need for affection, approach her like a child asking for attention, you don't awaken tenderness. You awaken pity, and pity is the prelude to rejection. I've seen brilliant, wise, successful men lose a young woman's respect because they made themselves overly available, because instead of offering presence, they offered anxiety. Instead of provoking, they begged. Instead of holding their own world, they waited to be included in hers. And that, my dear, isn't maturity. It's dependency disguised as love. A young woman can admire your experience. She can be drawn to your confidence. But if what she sees is a man who needs to be loved to feel valuable, she'll use you, ignore you, or leave you, not out of cruelty, out of instinct, because she wants to feel like she's with someone who has direction, not someone who needs emotional guidance. This first mistake, being emotionally needy, is not fixed with more messages, more gifts, or more devotion. It's fixed with one single decision. Stop acting like she's your lifeline and become the man who doesn't drown even when he sails alone. Because when you're whole, you don't seek to be chosen out of need. You inspire admiration through presence. And when that shows, it's felt. And when it's felt, desire changes course. If the first mistake was coming off as needy, the second one might be even worse because it slips by unnoticed, even by the most self-aware men. It's subtle, elegant, well-intentioned, but just as lethal. We've reached the second key point of this video, and it's this: seeking validation instead of commanding presence. And if you don't spot it in yourself and cut it at the root, you'll keep repeating the same pattern, catching her interest for a moment and losing it the second she gives you that ambiguous look. Let me explain it like this. When you ask her, "Do you like being with me? Do you find me attractive? Are you comfortable?" you're saying much more than you think. You're saying you need her validation to hold your worth together. You're saying without words that you don't know if you're enough, and that doubt, even if wrapped in tenderness or chivalry, is something a young woman can smell the way a predator smells fear. The female psyche, especially that of a young woman, is trained to scan. She scans your confidence, your gaze, your tone of voice, but above all, she scans for this: does this man validate himself, or does he need me to approve of him? Because if he needs my approval, then he's fragile, and if he's fragile, he's no longer desirable. Because desire in a asking for validation instead of commanding presence, young woman's mind doesn't come from affection, it comes from admiration. Stoicism, the real kind, not the watered-down version, taught that a wise man never begs for acceptance. He walks with balance, observes calmly, doesn't react to every little cue, and when a woman feels that you're not seeking her approval, but simply are, something switches on, because now she's not in front of someone desperate to be liked, she's in front of someone who already likes himself, someone who's not proving or explaining or worried about being too much. He's just there. And in a world full of men desperate to please that is magnetic, many older men lose their power right there, not because they lack presence, but because they don't believe it's enough. So they water it down with questions, with justifications, with follow-up messages. Instead of creating mystery, they create unnecessary conversation. Instead of letting her watch them with intrigue, they hand everything over on a silver platter. What they feel, what they want, what they need. And just like that, they kill the game before it even starts. The problem with seeking validation isn't just that it weakens your appeal. It's that it betrays your masculine nature because it turns you into something you're not. A man fixated on external approval. A man who doesn't lead, who doesn't inspire, who just waits. And that man, no matter how much experience, how many years, books, or accomplishments, won't be chosen. Because female choice, especially from a young woman, doesn't operate through logic. It runs on perception, on energy, on how you make her feel, and no one feels drawn to someone who doubts himself. The answer isn't to become numb, it's to become whole, to look in the mirror and affirm your presence without needing outside confirmation, to speak less and observe more, to look with the confidence of someone who doesn't compete because he knows true value doesn't need to be explained. It's felt, it's embodied, and when you embody your presence, when you stop asking for permission to be desired, that's when she starts looking at you differently, because now you're not just another man. You're that man who doesn't need to ask if he's wanted because it's already obvious that he is. So far, we've talked about the mistake of showing neediness and the subtle poison of seeking validation, but if you don't fix the next point, everything else falls apart, because you can have presence, stop begging, feel whole, but if your way of communicating is still rational, linear, logical, you're speaking a language the young woman doesn't hear. This next step is crucial because without it, you'll stay stuck in the same loop. The third point of this video is this: speaking from logic instead of desire. You think explaining why you're a good man will convince her. You think telling her your story, your stability, your sincere intentions will touch her heart, but she doesn't live in logic. She lives in perception, in intuition, in chemistry, and if you don't speak to that, It's like you're not speaking at all, because words don't seduce. What seduces is what those words spark. And if they don't spark tension, desire, intrigue, the only thing they'll spark is pity or boredom. This is where many older men fail. They approach a young woman like they're at a job interview. They talk about their achievements, their maturity, their desire for a serious relationship. And of course, she nods, smiles, says, "How interesting," and disappears, not because you weren't enough, but because you didn't activate anything, because instead of stirring emotion, you gave her a checklist, and checklists don't ignite. Desire can't be calculated. It has to be suggested. The strategy here is simple but powerful. Speaking from logic instead of desire, change the code. Stop explaining and start suggesting. Stop trying to convince and start provoking. Instead of telling her, "You're beautiful," look at her in silence with a subtle smile and let her feel it. Instead of asking her what she wants from life, say, "I'm not here to entertain you. I'm here to see if you can keep up." That line, that structure, it's not logical. It carries tension. It carries challenge. It carries polarity. And that hits a young woman like lightning. Here's a clear example. Imagine you're in conversation. You could ask about her studies, her job, her goals. Fine, that's polite. But if in the middle of that, you pause, look at her, and say, "You're looking at me like you've already imagined something," the whole vibe shifts because now you're not speaking from the head, you're speaking from the subconscious. And the female subconscious responds to play, to symbolism, to mystery, not to a speech. This way of speaking isn't manipulation. It's masculine emotional intelligence. It's understanding that desire doesn't respond to arguments. It responds to invisible triggers. And when you learn to master that code, you'll no longer need to convince a young woman that you're worth it. She'll feel it. And when she feels it, there is no competition. Before we move on to the next point, I want to invite you to subscribe to the channel and like this video if things are starting to become clearer. Let me know in the comments what country you're watching from, and if you've ever realized that she was listening to you but not desiring you. Just write one sentence. "I don't explain myself anymore," because there are still deep lessons ahead. And the last one might just make her stop seeing you as just another man and start seeing you as one who doesn't dare to lose. If in the last point I showed you how words can shut you down if they don't spark desire, now it's time to talk about something even deeper, something that doesn't just cool attraction, it kills your energy before she even sees you as a possibility. The fourth point of this video is a subtle trap disguised as maturity but loaded with disconnection, seeking a relationship when she's looking for an experience. And here, I want you to pay close attention because this mistake isn't obvious. It doesn't show in what you say, but in what you project. The older man who approaches with the intention of settling down, of building something serious, of doing things right, believes that makes him valuable. But in the eyes of a young woman, it makes him predictable, tired, rigid, because she's not looking for a tidy life. She's looking for intensity, for movement, for something that makes her feel alive. And if you show up as someone who wants everything labeled, planned, and structured, then without even knowing it, you've already bored her. A young woman doesn't reject stability. She rejects stability being the only thing you offer. Because if you can't create emotion, tension, challenge, then you come off as a man who's already stepped away from the game. And she doesn't want a man who's retired from desire. She wants a man who still owns it, who brings her into his world, not someone who wants to enter hers asking for a spot. And when you present yourself as someone who's done playing games, who's looking for something serious, who wants to settle down, you're unknowingly saying, "I want you to be my shelter." But she doesn't want to be that. She wants to be an adventure, not a safe haven. This mistake takes root in your mind because you've spent years hearing that at your age there's no room for games, that it's time to grow up, that you need to find someone to walk beside you, and that message might work with women your own age, but it's poison with a 25-year-old because to her, you're not here to do paperwork or talk about the future, looking for a relationship when she's craving an experience. You're here to ignite an experience she hasn't lived yet, a story she'll remember, something that pulls her out of the routine, not drags her deeper into it. The consequences of falling into this trap are brutal, because you might have chemistry, you might have caught her attention, you might even have sparked curiosity, but the moment you present yourself as a man who wants something serious before you've awakened her desire, you become a burden, a weight, and she, who might have been ready to feel something, now just wants to run, not out of cruelty, out of instinct, because her youth isn't prioritizing commitment, it's prioritizing intensity, and if you don't get that, you'll end up talking about being a couple when she's still deciding if she wants to see you again. The key is not to jump ahead. Don't speak from the need to connect. Speak from the power of offering a world. Don't ask if she wants something with you. Show her that you already have a life and that she could live something unforgettable if she dares to step into it. Don't sell her security. Seduce her with direction. Don't ask if she's ready. Make her not want to leave. Because if you show up as a man who's here to offer an experience, then she, even without meaning to, will start imagining herself in that story. And when that happens, you're no longer just another man. You're the exception. We've reached the 5th point of this video, and there's no room for sugarcoating here, because this mistake doesn't just make you lose a young woman's interest, it makes you lose the respect of any woman. The mistake is this: not controlling your masculine energy, and if you don't master this, it won't matter how much you read, how hard you try, how fit you get, or how well you communicate. You'll remain invisible, or worse, you'll be seen as a man who no longer resonates. What does it mean to not control your masculine energy? It means walking through life afraid of desire, guilty for feeling, ashamed of your virility. It means living with the brakes on as if you're scared of offending every time you speak, every time you look, every time you suggest. It means being tamed by years of relationships, by women who made you feel like you were too intense, too sexual, not spiritual enough. And little by little, you turned down the fire. You stopped provoking. You stopped touching. You stopped looking like a man and started looking like a resigned husband, an emotional dad, someone who sticks around but no longer lights anything up. The consequence is clear. A young woman might see you, might hear you, might even appreciate you, but if she doesn't sense that masculine tension that shakes her to the core, she's not going to choose you. Because sure, you might be interesting, but you're not magnetic. And in the female mind, especially that of a young woman, magnetism isn't logical. It's felt, it's smelled, it's sensed, and if your energy is off, she's going to go with the man who does make her tremble, even if he has half your resources. Can you turn this around? Yes, but not with lines, not with techniques, with a decision, with a deep reconstruction of your identity. You have to accept again that your desire is not a sin, that your strength is not oppression, that your masculinity, when well directed, is not only acceptable, it's desired. You have to stop asking for permission to be a man. Because female desire isn't turned on by tenderness, it's turned on by direction, by certainty, by that low, grounded tone that isn't trying to be accepted, it's trying to be felt. The mindset you need to adopt is this: I'm not here to be liked, I'm here to make an impact, to leave a mark, to be remembered, not as the nice guy, as the man she can't forget, because he had an energy that didn't ask, it demanded. It was felt in the way he looked, the way he walked, failing to control your masculine energy the way he spoke. That man doesn't say much, but when he does, the silence afterwards says everything. And that silence, my friend, is worth more than 1,000 perfectly chosen words. Reclaim yourself, not from anger, from power, not out of revenge, out of clarity, because you weren't born to be functional. You were born to be fire. And if you go dim, no one's coming to relight you. Only you can do that. But first, you have to stop fearing your own strength, because when you respect yourself, she starts to desire you. And when that happens, the game changes. You're no longer the one begging for love. You're the one who makes her for the first time wonder if she's enough for you. If in the last point we talked about reclaiming your masculine energy, now it's time to talk about what happens when that energy, instead of standing strong, turns harmless. When instead of commanding respect, you create comfort, and not the healthy kind. No, the kind that makes you predictable. You no longer intimidate, no longer intrigue. You're just there, present, available, and increasingly invisible. We've arrived at the 6th point of this video, and it's one of the most counterintuitive, trying to seduce without first unsettling her just a little. Picture it. You're with a young woman. She looks at you, smiles, she's polite, and you, thinking you're on the right track, start being even more respectful, more attentive, sweeter. But something shifts in her eyes. The spark fades. The tension's gone because you treated her like a delicate flower, when what she needed was to feel the presence of a man who doesn't fold, who doesn't explain himself, who isn't afraid to cause a little discomfort. And that's where you lose her. Not because you were bad, because you were too good, and that bored her. A young woman needs a hint of uncertainty to feel turned on. Not because she loves drama, but because her desire is sparked by tension, by polarity, by that feeling of, I don't know what might happen with this man, but there's something different about him. And if in your effort to be dependable, you eliminate all mystery, all emotional impact, you'll bore her to death because she's not looking for the best candidate. She's looking for the man who makes her feel alive. A woman doesn't surrender when she feels safe. She surrenders when she feels provoked, when she can't predict you, when there's something about you that throws her off balance, that she doesn't fully understand. And if you don't create that, she won't desire you. She'll appreciate you. And appreciation for a young woman is the prelude to forgetting, because you can be proper, elegant, polite. But if you didn't shake something inside her, you didn't become unforgettable. And if you leave no mark, you're just passing through. The key isn't to be cruel. It's to be solid, to look at her with the calm of a man who doesn't ask for permission to want her, who doesn't apologize for being strong, who doesn't compliment her in every sentence because he doesn't need to win her over. A man who, with just one pause, with one deep look, makes her ask herself, who is this guy? And that's when real desire begins. Not in validation, in doubt, in the thrill, in that sensation of standing in front of someone who needs nothing. But if he chooses you, he does it with full force. Next time you're talking to a young woman, don't try to be liked. Try to leave a mark. Let her feel a little uneasy. Let her wonder if you're flirting or being serious. Make her work to read you, because that slight, elegant discomfort, that's the space where attraction is born. And if you don't create it, you'll keep being the good guy, the one she never really wanted. If the last point showed you that without tension, there's no desire, this final one closes the trying to seduce without first unsettling her a little circle with a more brutal truth. It's not enough to provoke, to challenge, or to light something up in her, if in the crucial moment you ruin it all with empty words. We're at the 7th point of this video, and it might just be the most decisive. Talking too much instead of looking at her like a man who doesn't ask for permission after all the previous mistakes, neediness, validation, logic, expectation, dim energy, lack of tension. Many men fall into this one, over-explaining. They think that the more they talk, the more clarity they create. But they don't realize that in the language of a young woman, too many words signal insecurity, because the man who has to explain everything, justify every move, reassure that his intentions are good, is the man who's already lost the mystery, lost his center, lost the spark. A young woman doesn't need you to say everything. She needs you to look at her, to watch her in silence, to make her feel that you know exactly what's happening without saying a word. And that's not something you learn from books. It's something you train with composure, with presence, with the ability to hold desire without turning it into a monologue. Because desire is either felt or it breaks. And if you talk too much, you're breaking it. Think about it. You're in front of her. There's tension, there's chemistry, but instead of letting the moment breathe, you start explaining what you feel, telling her what you're thinking, sharing what you've been through, and she disconnects. Not because she doesn't care, but because the moment stopped being masculine. It turned emotionally anxious, childish, and you, who had the fire, put it out with words. The shift has to come from you, from closing your mouth and opening your gaze, from letting your silences speak louder than your lines, from understanding that a man who knows who he is doesn't explain himself, doesn't defend himself, doesn't strip down with words he imposes, with an energy that doesn't need to be translated because it's felt, it's recognized, it's respected. Today, after everything you've heard, there are no more excuses. You know why she ignored you. You know why she disconnected. You know why you lost her desire even when you did everything right, because doing everything right means nothing. If it comes from a weak place, from a man who didn't dare to look without speaking, to stay without begging, to be without asking for permission, this is the moment to break that pattern. Not tomorrow, now. Because if you don't, you'll keep being the man she forgets the moment the door closes, not out of cruelty, out of lack of impact. And a man who leaves no mark is a man who no longer exists on the map of her desire. If you've made it this far, you're not just another man, because most give up the moment something makes them uncomfortable. Most would rather keep believing it's about luck, age, or fate, when in reality, it's about codes. Today you saw them, today you heard them, and now you can't pretend you don't know. You've got a decision to make. Keep walking through life as the man who doesn't understand why desire fades, or start moving like the man who, talking too much, instead of looking at her like a man who doesn't ask for permission, never has to ask for attention, because wherever he goes, he leaves a mark. Drop a comment below with just one sentence, "I don't ask for permission," and tell me which country you're watching from, because it doesn't matter if you're in Argentina, Mexico, Spain, or the United States. When a man wakes up, his energy crosses borders. I'm Celia, psychologist, therapist, and a woman who spent years listening to the confessions no husband ever saw coming. This channel doesn't exist to comfort you. It exists to give back the respect you lost trying to be liked. Here we talk about what's uncomfortable, because what's uncomfortable transforms. This is your house of wisdom, a space for men who don't want to be obedient anymore. They want to be respected. Subscribe now if this conversation hits something deep inside you. If you know there's no more time to keep being the lukewarm man she forgets, share this video with that friend who's still chasing after women who use him and toss him aside. Maybe this is exactly what he needs to hear to start rebuilding himself. And don't leave just yet. Watch the videos that are about to appear on screen. Pick the one that makes you the most uncomfortable, because right there in that discomfort is your next step. This conversation doesn't end here. It's just beginning.